into sheets of it. And I can do that within seconds. And I have done so too. Oh, and my parents, they didn't exactly like that too much. Oh man, especially when we were camping. Oh man. I ended up washing out our rug, our outdoor rug. Oh man, it got muddy. And it also ended up on the shore. Oops. Anyway, and let's see here. I'm always sharing stories with you. Alrighty. And other than sharing stories with you and my knowledge, I also plan on more likely in the next show, I will be sharing with you my music. As if you have heard me on Monster Castle Paranormal Radio, I did a few live performances, and they quite enjoyed it, and as did I. I'll also be talking to you about my book, my 5-star rated book, Path of the Scion, Ultimate Guide to Learning Psychic Abilities. I'll also be talking about the follow-up book, the first follow-up book called Path of the Scion, Ultimate Guide to Learning Telekinesis. Pretty moving, eh? Now, onto some more stories. In particular, a story that I call the Oracle Story. Now, this is back when I was about 4. It was summer, and there was definitely some clouds in the sky, especially after it had lightly drizzled rain, and so the ground was quite muddy. And yes, it'd be a little more than a drizzle, but not a god awful amount. And I remember I was right beside my birth mother's red car. It was like a Volvo or something, or a Chevy, or some kind of a car anyway that was red. And there she was. She was wiping something off the window. Probably a bug or something. But anyway, and then I remember I looked up at her and I was smiling and said, "Mama, Mama." And she looked down at me and she would smile and say, "Yes, Booga." And that was my nickname back then. Anyway, and yeah. And so there I was. And I was crawling on the ground, and then all of a sudden, I felt this intense feeling in the back of my head, inside my head. It was incredible. And then I saw just this vision, this vision of this blue giant star, a giant blue star. And to give you some perspective, our sun, well, you could fit likely billions of our suns in a giant blue sun, blue star. Kind of similar to the way you can fit a god-awful amount of Earths in the sun. Yeah, pretty big. And yeah, I saw this giant blue star. But there were three balls that were orbiting it, and these things were gigantic. Unbelievably so. And they did look a lot like planets. But the thing is, how could they be planets? They were spherical, and they had mountains, and they had, it was green, there was blue, but how could they be planets? This kind of fascinates me even to this day of how and what exactly those were. But that wasn't all I saw in this. I also saw a black hole. Now it's kind of interesting because in shows like Sliders, which was from, God, I think that was from the 90s. That was a pretty good show too. But they showed an interdimensional portal, and it looked very much like a two-dimensional object, kind of like a floating staticky plate. And when it comes down to black holes, a lot of people think that black holes are a lot like that they're more two-dimensional, or sometimes they're like a cone. But in space, if you were able to light a candle in space, the flame of the candle would expand very much like a ball. Now, if you take a black hole, the black hole is very much like the flame. It isn't a two-dimensional object. In actuality, it's not quite even a three-dimensional object. It's higher than that. And now, this black hole is actually a sphere. And the sphere has immense gravity. So much gravity that actually has so much gravitational mass and force that actually draws in light, matter, energy into it. it's actually kind of interesting because there's a theory that it's called the black hole, white hole theory. And this theory is that the all of the energy, the mass, the matter that gets drawn into a black hole is actually basically converted into an alternate reality, an adjacent reality. Thus, the white hole. And you can kind of think of the white hole as being, well, like a Big Bang. And that is actually quite a very sound theory. Now, back to more psychic stuff. And so, there was a black hole, a very large one. There was a giant blue star, 3 massive objects that revolved right around it, and then there I was, like a 4-year-old guy. Huh. 4-year-old little man. And so as such, I remember I placed my right hand onto the mud, and I drew this giant blue, well, it wasn't blue, but this giant hole in the ground, basically, kind of through the mud. And then I drew another 3 smaller ones right around it. And then I made this larger impression on the ground, in the mud, and connected all of them with a circle. And there was my mother. She looked down, she smiled, and she knew something was up. Something quite large. And she is very intuitive. And so she really knew. And so so she grabbed her camera, and she actually snapped a few photos of that moment, of that hand mud painting in the ground, that very moment, that amazing moment, captured on film. No, on a camera. And that was quite the day. And then now my next story is one I call the Queen Ant story. Now, this happened when I was, probably anywhere from 5 to 7. I can't exactly remember the exact year that it was, but I know it was in between one of those. Kind of funny because it was one of the most unleashing moments of my life thus far.